Francesca Mason-Boring is a bicultural facilitator and trainer of family systems constellation. Informed by the work of many of the early masters in family systems constellation, as well as her own indigenous elders, Francesca has been a key figure in the development of the integration of ceremony and ritual in constellation work, including nature, social systems and community, and respecting ancestors not only as archetypes, metaphors, or allegories, but as relevant, available testament to our resilience. Francesca, thank you so much for being with us today. Welcome.
Lisa, thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I hope that some of this will be helpful for people.
I'm sure it will. You've got some fascinating things to talk about. Let's start out with, would you explain what you mean when you say family systems constellations?
It began in Germany, predominantly a gentleman by the name of Bert Hellinger. Actually was informed a great deal by the Zulu people in South Africa that he was working with. And for now, maybe 30 years, his work has been expanding. One of the things that he began to notice was this loyalty that people have to folks in their family system. He also noticed something very different, and it's part of the work that actually is informed by the Zulu people, and it's parallel in a lot of indigenous traditions. So one of the things that Hellinger observed, being a German with a background in psychotherapy, one of the things that he observed was that there was really a difference in the emotional carriage, I guess you would say, of the Zulu people. That there was really a sense of joy, that there can be, even with financial difficulties or whatever the social issues are, there can be a kind of a very grounded lightness. And perhaps joy is really the best explanation. And he was a bit puzzled because coming from a Western background, we're very used to psychotherapy and many healing traditions looking at where is the pathology, what's wrong here. And he was puzzled because that sense of dissatisfaction, that consistent kind of looking for which parent should I blame most, or how is this my parents' fault that I'm not happy or that I've been wronged as a child. He was very puzzled. How could it be that people of a Western mindset who had access to a lot of resources in terms of therapy have this very consistent sort of dissatisfaction, a sense of unhappiness. So he, in different conversations, inquired, and it seems as though the philosophy of the Zulu was, when they were questioned, why don't you blame your parents? How can you be so happy? And the consensus was, my parents gave me life. They gave me my life. What more precious gift, what bigger thing could a person ever give another human being? They gave me life. And now, what I do with that life, that's my responsibility. And family constellation, in part, was birthed out of introducing what happens if we engage that paradigm. Part of what can happen is that it is a bit easier to separate my pain from their pain. So it's not just that I have this precious gift of life that is my responsibility, my challenge, my invitation. But the other thing is that I'm able to look at them really separately, not from a place of judgment, but I'm able to see, and this is really part of the crux of systems constellation, I'm able to see them in context. Who were they because? What was their life? What was their experience? And so it's a really different way of looking at my life, of stepping away from blame and separating myself from pains that are not actually mine.
I think that's a really good foundation for where we're starting from, where Hellinger came up with the beginnings of his work. But let's just say that somebody comes to you asking for assistance, and you're going to help them figure out some ancestral trauma using the family systems constellation. What actually is the process?
At this point, we can see that it's really accurate to say that when people come together to do a family constellation, when they come together as a group, or even if someone is doing work one-on-one, something opens, which we call the knowing field. And there is this property in this exchange, this exploration, that truly seems to access parts of my family system history, parts of my family system dynamics that before have been invisible to me. In a family constellation, what is opened is often a dynamic that we have not been conscious of before that really is a game changer. The process, in many instances, people come together in a circle. It's not required, but I think that just the nature of the work has made it very comfortable for people to sit together in that way. And folks represent, if I'm the client, I ask, would you be willing to stand as a representative for my mother, my father, an uncle who died tragically, different people who have been identified in a preliminary interview are placed as representatives. What has been really uncanny is the accuracy with which people can represent different dynamics in that family system. So as time has moved and as things are evolving, we're finding out that in fact there actually is this capacity in the physical brain to be able to read schematics. And if we think about it, it's natural in the days of the cave. If I saw another group coming toward my family and myself, I would really need to be able, from quite a distance, to be able to determine what is the nature of that group of people who are approaching. And it actually would be that I would be processing a schematic. The layout of those people, are they compressed? Are they casually kind of walking at a fair distance from each other? And so we do actually, as human beings, have this physical ability to read these schematics that people unconsciously place. But the other aspect, because it's really a lovely discipline in that there is this very structural component and there is this very ancient knowing component that arises, and those two merge so that you can have verbal exchanges between representatives that are sort of invited by the facilitator. And in those exchanges, you can often hear something that was never said, that was never spoken, and that was truly unknown to anyone living, for instance, in the family system today. And yet what happens, it's no different than when you're in conversation with someone in a very intense way. You really feel in your whole body, and so does everyone in the room, the point of truth. Even if it's a statement that has never been made before, in my conscious awareness, there is something in my whole body that tells me this is true. That one representative says to another, this was not your pain. Or sometimes there can be something very traumatic. And the story that's told, for lots of reasons, may not actually be what's true. And so we're able to see the phraseology that's often used is at the level of the soul. So there is something about this work that's different than just the cognitive processing. There's this acknowledging that something is happening really in a different place and at a different kind of depth. And in fact, sometimes it may challenge my story. It may challenge the family story or what I've heard. But what I love is that this knowing field that opens in this gathering of people who are doing a family constellation to look at a difficult issue, a place where I've been stuck. And I've had lots of processes, lots of wonderful professional help, but this one issue has never resolved. So I come to do a constellation, and lo and behold, something truly, truly shifts. And so one of the things that's beautiful for people is that for practitioners and for clients, it's often the case that this is a, perhaps it's a different door, a new door that provides an opportunity that other things have not seemed to provide. And it's challenging because this knowing field at times even extends beyond the point at which people leave the circle. So it's not at all unusual that when someone goes home, they get a phone call and someone says, "Oh my gosh, I just had to call you because I wanted to let you know that we found this trunk that belonged to Aunt Mary. And it's got all these papers in it that we've never seen and things that we've never heard about." So it's really one of the very interesting characteristics of this work that we have this huge body now of anecdotal information about how, and my own worldview says, of course, ancestors are partly involved here, excited that at last the doors have been opened. And so there is this very, very beautiful, um, generous kind of extension of this knowing field that continues this healing movement when people do a family constellation.